let's close things out on this episode because it is the eve of Sidney Crosby's birthday. Whatever that means for his contract, we will not know until tomorrow, but it is the eve of his 37th birthday. So we got to talk about him a little bit. We're going to give you the top 5 moments of Sidney Crosby's career. I'm going to list down my top 5. Horwat's going to pick it apart. Tell me what I missed, because I'm sure I missed one because there's so many moments. It's tough to rank the top 5. I tried to do it. So let me, give you my top 5, and then you in the comments as well. Pick it apart because that's what it's here for. Number 5, Winter Classic shootout winner in 2008 Winter Classic. This was the first mainstream moment for Sidney Crosby, really in the national eye, not just hockey, but this was the first of its kind, first event of its kind, really for anybody to see. And it was on New Year's Day. Everybody was watching. Sidney Crosby goes out with the game on his stick, as Doc Emmerich said. He was the marquee star in the first Winter Classic, and he ended the first Winter Classic with a shootout winner against Ryan Miller. Crazy, crazy visuals. One of the best moments of his career, bar none. I put that at number 5.
And that's a perfect spot for it. That's a good position. I had it on my list as well. Just a iconic moment with the snow swirling. Looked like a snow globe out there. You're right. The first, prominent outdoor game in the NHL's history, with the marquee star taking over it back when the shootout was still kind of cool too. I think that helped. That helped a lot for the moment. It helped that it was Sidney Crosby taking over. The game in itself was kind of a dud, but it was about the aesthetics. It was about the scene and the greatest player in the world at the time serving up one of the best moments that the NHL had to offer.
Mm-hmm. Now let's move over to number 4. At number 4 for Sidney Crosby, I have the 2016 Eastern Conference Finals, Game 2. Sidney Crosby takes a feed from Brian Rust, pots what is still to this day his only playoff overtime winning goal. That pulled the series even to 1-1. And imagine what happens if they don't win that game. Obviously, everybody knows, even with Andrei Vasilevsky in that series, because Ben Bishop went down in Game 1, the Tampa Bay Lightning were incredibly game in that series. In fact, they had a 3-2 series lead before the Penguins won Game 6 on the road and Game 7 at home with some more Brian Rust heroics. But imagine if they lose that game and go down 2-0 heading back to Tampa Bay. What happens in that series? Do the Penguins lose and not win the Cup in 2016? And if they don't win in 2016, what happens to them in 2017? Is there a domino effect where they don't win either of those Cups? And at that point, what happens to Sidney Crosby's legacy? That goal pulled the series even, a series that ended up coming down to the wire, 2-1 Game 7 victory for the Penguins. I think that is a underappreciated moment of Crosby's career. I think most people would highlight it as one of the better moments of his career, but the domino effect of what could have happened if he didn't score that goal. And it was an insane shot too, going against the grain, going over the blocker side, top shelf. If he didn't score that goal, what the domino effect could have been for his legacy, I put that as the top 5, and I actually put that at number 4.
I like that your domino effect is just big braining things of maybe things wouldn't have happened. And it's totally fair though, because let's say the Penguins don't win the Stanley Cup, obviously, in 2016. Who knows if that means Jim Rutherford makes different moves, decides to make certain moves that offseason. And maybe that just doesn't work out because it's the butterfly effect. Everything kind of lines up the way it does. I like this choice, actually. I think it's an underrated choice, too. It's one of the more, like you said, underappreciated moments. It's one that, especially if it stands at the end of his career as his only overtime playoff goal, then that's just one of those things you'll have to always look at.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. So let me know in the comments. How do you think I'm doing so far? Winter Classic shootout. Number 5, number 4, 2016 Eastern Conference Final overtime winner. Number 3, this one might get torn apart a little bit. Game 2 of a 2010 playoff series against the Ottawa Senators. The reason that I put this particular play in this particular moment at number 3 is because it highlights everything that Sidney Crosby does at his best. Penguins down 1-0 in that series. Game tied 1-1 with 5 minutes left. Crosby puts on a behind-the-net masterclass, having potential future Hall of Famer Jason Spezza look like a child. Back and forth. Spezza couldn't get the puck off of him. Puck protection, edge work, everything that Sidney Crosby is known to be one of the best, if not the best, in NHL history at being. He does that with 5 minutes left in a tie game, down in the series to a team that, let's not forget, the first time these two teams met, the Ottawa Senators took down the Penguins in 5 games in Crosby's first playoff series. So there were a little bit of personal demons in there at this point. Instead, Crosby embarrasses Spezza, gets the puck up to Chris Letang. He scores the goal. The Penguins win the game. 2010 doesn't go great for the Pens. They win that series, but they do lose in the second round. But I do think that when you look at that specific play, it highlights everything that Sidney Crosby has done throughout his career and what he is best at that everybody needs to notice. It's a lot of the small things, and that play was a lot of the small things that led to a major goal that he didn't even put in the back of the net.
And I like that one too. It's one of those clips that continues to go around on the internet every so often. It's an easy choice. It made all the more fun that Jason Spezza works in the Penguins organization now too.
Yeah. It's great that those two probably have talked about that at some point in the past year, and probably before that as well. But Crosby had to say, remember that time back in 2010? And Chris was probably like, yeah, I remember that. I was there. But it would be a lot of fun. So that's what I have as number 3 as far as the top 5 moments. Number 2, and this could have been number 1, his return goal versus the New York Islanders in November of 2011. Hard to put this one anywhere but the top 2. Hard to not put this one at the top. After missing 320 days with concussion-like symptoms, neck injuries, he scores an insane backhand goal just 5 minutes into the game, taking the puck over at the red line at center ice and just cutting through the New York Islanders defense before depositing it into the top of the net. He had the celebration that is still probably the most excited you've seen him in a non-playoff game ever. And he also added another goal and 2 assists on that night in the Penguins' victory over the Islanders. So number 2, his return backhand goal against the New York Islanders.
Like, again, hard to disagree. I thought I had something to say on it. It's just one of those moments. It's one of those poetic moments in hockey, not even just in Penguins hockey or in Sidney Crosby's career. It's one of the most poetic moments in the NHL's history. Just the star being taken down for almost a year exactly, coming back and within no time finding a way to get on the score sheet and then having a great game to follow. Just one of those perfect Sidney Crosby poetic moments for the league.
When you think of moments like Austin Matthews scoring 4 goals in his NHL debut, you think of the Lemieux return where he came in and scored that goal. This is one of those moments where when you look back at his career, this has to be in the highlight reel. You can put any other goal in there. He's had several baseball bat goals early in his career. He had several goals where he went through 4 or 5 defensemen and he ended up putting it in the back of the net. This goal stands alone as far as top Penguins moments. To me, you can't go anywhere else but this one. And let's close things out with number 1. And I mentioned the return goal is the top Penguins moment. The best moment of Sidney Crosby's career, the highlight of his career, it's the golden goal. 2010 Winter Olympics, once again for the second time in this list, beats Ryan Miller. So a little underlying storyline there, but he clinches gold for Canada in Vancouver over the United States. It's a legendary moment that lives on not just in Crosby's lore, but really all of Hockey Canada and really all of hockey, where that is the crowning achievement of his career. Even though, I understand he won 3 Stanley Cups. When he won in 2009, he was the youngest captain to claim the Stanley Cup. I tried to keep just lifting the cup out of this because those are obviously fantastic moments. I wanted to keep it as moments that he created on the ice in real time. It's hard to go against the golden goal at number 1.
And I couldn't agree more. That was my number 1 choice too. It especially speaks loudly because we're having this discussion. I know it's not the same Olympics, but the Summer Olympics are going on right now. And pretty often you draw those comparisons of Olympic games. And it becomes front of mind every time, that sort of, that music plays, that Olympic music plays. Every time you see Team Canada in any sport for that matter, you understand that arguably one of the biggest moments in sports for Canada's history happened because of Sidney Crosby and what he was able to do at that specific moment. One of those moments that will live on forever, no matter what. It just will always stand the test of time, and because of the whole situation in Canada, playing against the United States in overtime, a couple of future Hall of Famers involved in it, and an assist from Jerome McGinley, or already Hall of Famer, and then maybe Ryan Miller one day. So it's, and then Crosby himself. It's just all lining up for one of the most perfect moments to ever grace hockey. I mean, that moment in itself, when you look at the grand scheme of just hockey moments, it's up there with the 1980 United States Olympic team as well.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough discussion. Not one that I want to get into at this particular moment in time. Maybe once the Four Nations face-off comes around, we'll have a couple of our friends from north of the border on, and we'll talk a little bit about 1980 versus 2010. But it's up there, but that's tough, man. That's a tough one. But top 5, according to me, which means you can tear this apart, and everybody in the comments can tear this apart. That's perfectly fine. Number 5, Winter Classic Shootout winner, 2016 over number 4, 2016 Eastern Conference Finals overtime winner. Number 3, Game 2 assist versus the Sens, where he absolutely put on the Ritz on Jason Spezza. Number 2, his return goal against the New York Islanders in 2011. And number 1, of course, the golden goal. Is there any that you believe that I egregiously missed and didn't put on this list?
I don't have egregious ones. I have a couple of deep cuts that I want to sort of bring up, more or less because it's not just Crosby on the ice. I have a couple of, one very deep cut, and it's more personal. But I have 2 pretty deep cuts that are his off-ice moments. The first one I'll keep short and easy. At the end of last season, I asked him during one of his scrums how he felt about him and Malkin playing in 82 games for the first time in their careers. And just, we all know how Crosby is. His response was, I'd rather have 81 in a playoff appearance. So it's just that sort of that drive to win. He doesn't care about how many games he's playing in. As cool of an achievement as it was for the fans to see those two play together in every game in a single season for the first time ever, he didn't care that much. He just wanted to make the playoffs. Obviously, they didn't make it, but that was just sort of a personal little moment for me, I thought. And this is another one that recently went around Twitter just a couple days ago. But that Gord Miller story where he tells the one of Crosby taking the Stanley Cup to, I believe it's a veterans hospital in Montreal. And, the blind man who was, bedridden, I forget which war he fought in, but Gord Miller tells the story way better than I do. I'm just kind of summarizing for this moment. Everyone should know what I'm talking about, but tracing his finger over Maurice Richard's name, every time I hear the story, I get chills. And it's an off-ice moment and goes to show that, Sidney Crosby is more than just a hockey player. Yeah, obviously, everyone always talks about how great of a person he is, but he genuinely is one of the greatest humans that anyone has ever interacted with. So, yeah, great stuff on and off the ice from Sidney Crosby and everything that we've listed. I just had to get at least the Gord Miller one in, and I don't know. I just thought it was a cool moment that, I was able to ask him something like that, and I thought he gave a perfect response.
Yeah, if there was one response that kind of encapsulated Sidney Crosby, that's it. Team achievement over personal achievement. Cool that him and his best bud got to play 82 games together. Not cool that they didn't make the playoffs, and he would have sat out that last regular season game if that would have given them opportunity to go try to win Lord Stanley's Cup. So happy early birthday to Sidney Crosby. Let us know in the comments section, like I mentioned, if you think we missed any moments on ice or off the ice. Share any stories that you want, any anecdotes that you have about Sidney Crosby, because it is, a day to celebrate.